All right, all right, all right. Okay, so just drove past the zoo, and Riley was saying that he had some fun at the zoo the other day, and it got me thinking. You go to the zoo. What animals are you first off most entertained by, but also like what do you like? What animals are you most looking forward to seeing? Like, I mean, you were at the San Diego Zoo, which is one of the most legit zoos in the entire world. So you're seeing everything from A to Z. So like what took you back and like what made you like oh my god, like sometimes the zoo is just a good experience, so go ahead.
Man, the classic answers of like tiger and like gorilla, like those are gorilla was awesome. It was quick, but it just depends on how like awake and lively the animal is too, right? Like a sleeping tiger compared to like some orangutans like picking stuff out of each other's teeth and grooming each other. I'd rather watch the orangutans do that.
Yeah.
um, so like we got to see some orangutans doing that. We got to see a little baby is either cheetah or leopard, but that was really cool with his mom. We're on the Sing train over here. I've brought this up a ton of
Hmm.
times. Slater's obsessed with Sing. So seeing the koala bear was awesome. And the koala bear was moving because apparently they sleep like 20 hours of the day or something. And this guy was jumping around on the trees, which was cool. But I would say the gorillas, elephant, those two are probably at the top of my list. What about you?
There is a hippopotamus at the Calgary Zoo that just makes you wonder how something can be that big and still move with force. And I think the hippos for me are just like, my goodness gracious, like you were a ton.
They're deadly too, I think, right? They're pretty mean.
Frightening, dude. Dude, I
Yeah.
saw a video the other day of a hippo like chasing after a boat, like on the bayou or wherever. Like
Yeah.
actually. Now, I have another question. Would you go on a safari?
100%. That's my
That was quick.
I don't have a big bucket list, but a real safari is hands down the top. There's this organization called VetPaw that I just stumbled on, and it's a bunch of ex-military guys that go and protect the wildlife, and I think it's in South Africa. And they actually let you like be part of the process of moving animals and like in a safe way, but like you're right there hands on. And I thought that would be hands down a dream. So I might look into that. But yeah, I would love to do that, man. That stuff's so cool to me. I love animals, and especially in the wild. So
All of a sudden, I'm just gonna hop on a Zoom with you one day, and you're gonna be in Africa.
yeah, I'm gonna be Ace Ventura and Pet Detective or When Nature Calls or whatever. Yeah.
And then other than that, I mean, I like, off season, like how's Slater, man? Like what's been going on? You've been kind of bouncing around a little bit.
Yeah, Slater's awesome. Growing like a weed, getting more and more interactive. He's really silly and he's really funny. We're having a blast with him. Nice to get some time to actually like engage and focus on our relationship with no hockey to worry about. And yeah, we're good, man. Just settled in Chicago. We're done traveling for a bit, and that's about it. So, what about you?
Well, it's finally public. Katrina and I, my lovely partner and I, decided to embark on a little adventure, the Amazing Race Canada. So that's been pretty exciting. It's been something that we can really look forward to throughout the summer. Summers are already busy, but to tack on Tuesday nights, we can watch ourselves on the Amazing Race Canada. Will be super neat, and I think it's been really uplifting and really amazing to already feel how much love and support, and how excited people are to watch us. And I think that's something that, always makes you, always makes you take some time to appreciate the people you have in your life. And yeah, we're excited. Something that we never really thought we would do, I guess. And Yeah, I'll have to watch and see how the results go. But let me tell you, it was a litmus test for your relationship.
What happens if like another program sees your skill on TV and they want you like Jersey Shore or like
Oh,
the real world challenge, like one of those? What happens? Are you saying yes or no?
what's the equivalent of a house like a the like if there was like a real house,
Yeah,
uh,
Real
yeah,
Housewives
of
Canada.
of Calgary, then yeah, I'd probably hop on. What I'm hoping for is that I'll be the next Nick Lachey. Yeah. I'd love
I'm
to.
surprised you even know who that is.
Well, Kat's got me on. What do Nick and Vanessa host? I don't know. Anyways, I would love to. Now that I've embraced this podcast co-host thing, I would love to host. Not host
You
at a
could,
restaurant.
I could see that. You'd be good at that.
So we will see what shakes out. But guess we'll have to watch and see. Other than that, welcome back to the Speak Your Mind podcast, powered by Torch Pro. And today we had a gentleman who has probably the epitome of success: 2 Stanley Cups, one of the best world junior teams of all time, but also just an incredibly humble, incredibly passionate individual that Riles brought on for us the man, the myth, the Okanagan legend, Andrew Ladd. So today we had the absolute pleasure of bringing on Andrew and talking about his 1616 Foundation, his roller coaster of a career and all that he's learned. And I know that I'm fully on the 1616 the train. I'm fully on, like choo choo. So what'd you think there, Riles?
No, it was great. I mean, obviously, you said it. He had an unbelievable NHL career and 1,000 games. Like that's in itself just an unbelievable achievement. And then you mix in the Stanley Cups, World Junior, some World Championships in there, and yeah, it was amazing. And just how his career went too. Like so much adversity, especially towards the tail end, for him to stick with it. It's really admirable. One of the two. Um, and then even the coolest part to me is the 1616 Foundation and the effect that it'll have on kids and the things that they're learning through Andrew and the foundation is it changes your life. So yeah, it was unreal and aligns with what we're doing here. Speak Your Mind, and we had a great time with it.
Please enjoy Andrew Ladd, but also go please enjoy the Speak Your Mind Instagram. Speak your underscore mind. Lick and Kick Fridays is our newest series, and licking an ice cream cone or getting kicked in the shin. A little end of week reflection is always needed in your life, and also New Two Tuesdays because I've been on an absolute heater. Wow, I feel like the Chicago Bulls. I feel like the Golden State Warriors. I mean,
Relax,
I am on
relax.
cloud nine right now. But anyways, I know that Riles got a couple up his sleeve, and he'll probably take me off my high horse here shortly. So as always, we love you. Speak your mind, and we will see you next time. And enjoy Andrew Ladd.
All right, we got Andrew Ladd on the show, but I'm going to start off by asking Ty how he's feeling right now. We just had a little bit of banter about Ty's last couple days, and Ty, how we doing over there?
Well, you guys have been through it, but I'm now at the age where everybody in my life decides that getting married is the greatest option in the world, and obviously with that comes bachelor parties. And wow, there was a bachelor party that got out of hand. But we talked a little bit about breathing before, and I think there's going to be a lot of valuable breathing in my life in the next little bit, and a lot of green tea on the esophagus, and hopefully, yeah, it's all a mindset, right?
You
Yeah,
might need to toss a cold tub in there too.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of things that I can implement into my life right now that I just need to, and it doesn't help that it's raging hot in Calgary right now. So as soon as I step outside, I instantly just start sweating. So
no better time to start now, though, Ty. Right? You got to get it all back together. No better time than now. But so we got Andrew Ladd on the pod. Super pumped to have you, Ladder. What's been going on lately? Where are you at?
Oh, so we are we're in Arizona and we just made the trek back to we're in the Okanagan now. So we're back here for the summer. We got the kids out. Kids are all getting in a routine. They're done school like May 24th. So it's been like a constant. How do we, Dad? We want to be entertained. So that's been a lot of my life a little bit lately. And then I've been getting into doing some executive coaching training to up my skills there, and then just working on our foundations 1616, which is a program that I'm sure we'll get into at some point here.
Yeah, I think we're both definitely looking forward to 1616. I'm going to be in the Okanagan at the end of July, but don't worry, I won't come knocking at your door at 2 a.m. Are you like Kelowna, like Vernon?
So we are in the midst of building a house in Kelowna. So we're in Lake Country right now.
Oh, that
So
lake is perfect.
yeah, so finding a place to rent for the entire summer in the Okanagan is a challenge in itself. So we were able to find something. So now we're or at least we know where we're going to be for the next 3 months.
And you got to be a big wake surfer, I hope.
I am, yeah. So I actually went yesterday for the first time in 2 years. So I was pumped to be back out in the lake. And then I got 3 young kids, so it's now I get to try to teach them how to figure that out, which will be a lot of fun too.
Are you a big? You're a big fisherman too, right? Because you still, or you did do a charity or an event, didn't you, around fishing?
Yeah, you know what's funny? It's like a myth that I'm a big fisherman a little bit. It's like I I had a buddy who his name's Kevin Estrada. I played with him my first year pro in Lowell, Massachusetts, and he in the summers his gig was he was a sturgeon fishing guide on the Fraser River, about an hour and a half outside of Vancouver. So he got me into sturgeon fishing, and by getting me into sturgeon fishing, literally was just me going fishing with him once or twice a summer. Hit him putting me on some really big fish, and then me reeling them in. So because of that, we created a charity event that we ran for 2 or 3 years. And ever since then, everybody that I've come across thinks I'm like this master angler that knows everything about fishing. And I'm like, "Ah, I don't even know how to put a hook on a line." So I got
Yeah,
everybody fooled there.
that's hilarious.
All right. Well, I mean, being the hockey fan I am, obviously, I think we start with the World Junior team. I think it's almost a must. I know that all my buddies are gonna love hearing this because if not the greatest team ever assembled. I just want to like even just ask like going into that and like knowing how much hype is around you guys. Like at a young age, it's like the World Juniors is already a big thing, but like then you chuck on all the pressure and knowing that you got Crosby, Getzlaff, Perry, all these guys coming in. I mean, you guys are obviously aware of each other, but when you getting into that setting, like how do you even begin to process like how much pressure is actually on you guys?
Oh yeah, it was. I'll even back it up before that because like a year before even that tournament, I was like a walk on with the Calgary Hitmen. So me like having watched, I just made the team in Calgary Hitmen out of camp and watching pretty much that same group the year before go through, that moment in the gold medal game where Fleury tries to shoot it out. It goes off. I don't know who it went off of it, back in his own net, the own goal. And they lose the heartbreaker. And really right from that moment, you're like, there was some pressure around that group because you knew the majority of those guys were coming back the next year. So the pressure started right then. The following summer, we had like the orientation camp with all the World Junior stuff. So, and right from there, you could tell there was like a massive amount of competition internally driven by those top guys. The Getzlaffs, the Jeff Carters, the Dion Phaneufs, the Brent Seabrooks, the Shea Webbers, Sid, Bergeron. I don't know if Bergie was there for the summer because he had played the year before with the Bruins. So it was kind of a foregone conclusion that he'd be on the team. But even in that camp, there was like such a high rate of intensity that you knew, like, hey, I just need to be a part of this team. Like, I just want to be. As long as I make this team, chances are we're going to win gold.
It's
So
like the dream team, American basketball team,
yeah,
MJ and all those guys.
exactly. So I think there was more internal pressure from guys trying to get into that group because you knew you were going to be part of something special. And then that leaned into like, okay, when we had the camp at Christmas, and I probably lucked out a little bit. Like Brent Sutter was our coach, and I felt like I had a shitty camp. So you're going through the whole like, like, am I going to make it? I didn't perform well during this time, and luckily I had a coach there that had seen me, 12 times a year the year before, so he knew what I brought to the table. He knew, I'd played with Ryan Getzlaff a lot, the year before and leading up to that point. So he knew kind of how our chemistry was and what I brought to the table. But to get the call and be like, hey, you're on that team was like, to me, when I grew up, I wasn't thinking like, hey, I want to play in the NHL. When I was growing up, I was like, hey, I would love to play on that World Junior team and win a gold medal. That was it. So to get that moment of like, hey, you made this team was just such an awesome moment. It was kind of the first big accomplishment for me in my hockey career. Up until that point, it was very rocky. I'd been cut multiple times by the Vancouver Giants. I'd played, junior B, junior A, and I was slowly working my way up. So it almost felt there was like a disbelief that I was even there. And then I was in awe of like everybody that was on the ice, just watching them practice, the level that they competed at, and then the skill level. That was a beginning of me being like, okay, like there's a whole nother level that I need to get to, and being surrounded by, now you can say greatness, but at that time you're just like trying to keep up, right? But to look back and see the amount of talent and I would say character too, man. There was just like a lot of character people on that team, and to have that from your peers at such a young age was so impactful for me as I moved into pro.
Yeah. Well, geez, like you look at how many of those guys ended up coming to be captains or assistant captains in the league. It's pretty incredible, and like not just like some of the best players to ever play. So that's unreal. So going back before World Juniors, then like that time you're saying like getting cut and like playing junior B, like what was your mindset like then to stick with hockey and like to like is it always something you knew you wanted to do is keep developing and keep making onto that next level? Like was it ever tough for you to like slug it out and keep moving forward when some things weren't going your way?
Yeah, and I actually like my first year Bantam was it? I think it was first year Bantam. I got cut. I broke my leg that like spring hockey, and then I got cut from the AAA team that year. And that for me was like the first time that I really struggled with there's like shame and embarrassment of like, oh, like I've been playing with a group of players, and my brother was a year older than me, so I got to play with him every other year, and he was gonna be on that team. So that when I look back, that was a key moment for me because there you have all those emotions related to not making it, getting cut, and those can be moments that define you. So I specifically remember, my parents sitting me down and being like, hey, like you still get to play hockey, you still get to do what you love, and you get to kind of choose how you want to show up for your teammates and this new team that you're going to be on this year. And I look back and that was the best thing for me. I played a crap ton that year. I was one of the better players on the team. I gained confidence that I rolled over into the next year. So in saying that, like that experience of how do I handle adversity in that at that time lent itself to how I showed up when I got cut by the Vancouver Giants when I was 16. I had to go back and play junior B. It wasn't like, wasn't embarrassment and shame. Obviously there's a little bit of that, but like it was like, okay, like how do I make the best out of playing junior B as a 16-year-old? And then I went and tried out again next year and got cut again, and I was like, all right, shit. Then a little bit of doubt starts to creep in, but it was still like, okay, it was still like, okay, like how do I make the best out of playing junior A? What do I get to do here? And you guys both know, like once you start to become, you're a part of any team, like you're just having fun playing hockey and being a part of that. And the blessing in disguise was playing more at a lower level and having more opportunity, having more ice time. That was way more beneficial for me than playing as a 16-year-old or 17-year-old in the dub and only playing 8 to 10 minutes a night and trying to grind for minutes. I don't know what
Yeah.
that would have done for my confidence. So by the time I got to Calgary when I was 18 and trying out, I was just like, I got nothing to lose. I'm just going to go out and keep playing the way I've been playing the last couple of years. And kind of the rest was history from there.
No, that's perfect because I think like it ties really much a lot into like reflection. And I think, I mean, you could probably relate to, you've done a lot of reflection in these past couple of years, especially with the foundation now, and especially just with like mindset work and energy and everything. And I think as, you know, not just as athletes, but I think as humans, we don't want to take the time to reflect, especially on the harder moments. So, I mean, like looking back now, like have you had so many more instances of reflection, like even going back to your junior days now with you sharing your story and like wanting to help youth athletes more and more, just because I mean you went from world juniors to, you know, and then you're winning Stanley Cups, and I think there was probably no time to actually just reflect like when you're constantly going. So now like has there been so many more instances of, all right, like let's dive into this, even though I'm not going to remember all the details, like I want to dive into like how that affected my energy and my confidence and like just like my overall like well-being.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. I think like with that reflection, there's an understanding of how I was shaped as a human being. And there's good and bad in that, right? You look at certain things and you're like, okay, yeah, I like that about myself, or I like who that makes me today. And then there's other stuff that's like maybe not so fun to look at, and you're like, okay, yeah, like I would have changed that, and maybe wouldn't have gone about it the same way. But that's all a part of being human. Like being human is messy, and one of the benefits of getting older is you get to kind of look at that mess, sort it out, and then decide, okay, like I want to keep this, or I want to chuck this away, and then who do I want to be? So it's definitely had a massive impact on me now that I reflect. Just the parts that I want to take, and then the parts, the places I want to grow going forward, and the idea that game never ends. You're constantly trying to tinker and evaluate and grow in different aspects of your life, and as you get older, you know those things shift in terms of what's important to you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's a great way to put it. I told you kind of some of our questions last night that I'd hit you with,
Yeah.
and I'm going to hit you with three words to describe your career. I think it's a good way to maybe break down some different moments, and three words kind of gives you the opportunity to sort of like hit us with the positive moments and the negatives too, and kind of mix it all in there. So, what are your three words?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the first one I wrote down was when I was just thinking about this, but like was gratitude. Grateful for like the positions that and experiences that I was put in. I was fortunate enough to, when I came into the league, be put in a very great position of playing with so many veteran players like Rod Brindamore and Ray Whitney, Glenn Wesley, Brett Hedican, Kevin Adams. The list kind of just goes on and on. Mark Recchi, Doug Waite, Matt Cullen was there. So like I like that experience of seeing how those people operated, and then throughout just throughout my career, the relationships. You guys understand that, like the relationships, people you meet, the communities that you get embedded in, like that's what you remember. At least that's what I remember. When I look back on my career, and even winning like Stanley Cups, you don't. It's the moments along the way that you really pull out and connect to, of like the moments of adversity. So I think like grateful for just all those different moments was really the first thing that comes to mind. Second word would be like roller coaster. It's a roller coaster, man. Like there's so many moments of like exhilaration, and there's a lot of downs, and so I think navigating that roller coaster, when you're younger, it's so much more highs and lows, and you learn how to understand them, and maybe ride with them a little more, instead of trying to pull yourself way up and then way down, and if that makes sense, emotionally that becomes draining on you. So as I've looked back, it's like, oh, like it was the different moments of like, hey, getting traded from Carolina the first time, and you're like, hey, like you thought you'd be there forever, and then all of a sudden the next day, it's trade deadline and you're on a plane to Chicago, without any thought. Like those are the moments, like roller coaster moments, that until you're in it, you don't really realize how you have to try to navigate them.
Yeah, you
Okay.
got one more.
Yeah,
You got
one
one
more.
more.
And then
Oh,
I got a one word question too.
um, the last one I think just resilience. I think like throughout my career, I was resilient with everything that was kind of thrown at me, and maybe even early on in my life, that it was a lot of like my mom always said when I was growing up, just if you want Andrew to do something, just tell him he can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of had that mindset all the way up until the end of my career when I was like, not wanted anymore and had a bunch of injuries, and everybody was questioning whether I could even play in the NHL or all those different things. So I think resilience is a word that, I'm fond of. And I think I partly because I'm pretty good at that is probably why I remember those things. But I'm kind of a stubborn prick when it comes to that.
Okay, I grew up in Leduc, so obviously, 06 was probably the most
Oh,
heartbreaking year of any
yeah,
Edmontonian. Or,
yeah.
but I gotta say, like you coming into that team. Actually, I have family friends who are related to Glenn Wesley, so like we got a side stick from Glenn Wesley, and you got Rod the Bod, and like, but what is one word to describe that series? Because like I still watch the hype video from that series back in 06, and I just want to run through a wall, and I couldn't imagine like actually like being in Raw and like Carolina and also Rexall, because Rexall was just an absolute shit show. What is
Hmm.
one word to describe that series, especially like that's your first playoff experience?
One word to describe that. That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, mayhem might be the word. I don't know. It was like
It's a good one.
Pandemonium.
being pandemonium, like being up 3-1. Just like the whole series was crazy, and like the first game, and then I got tripped into Rollison. He got hurt. The goalie the carousal for Edmonton. It wasn't my fault, man. I got tripped. I'm
Hey,
telling
no,
you.
I'm
Eh?
all I'm gonna say is
Don't look at me like that.
God bless Marc Andre Bergeron, but we all know it was Mark's fault.
Yeah. So, and then like, man, like the nerves coming back for Game 7. It was like at the time I didn't appreciate what I was in, and now I look back and I'm like, holy shit, that was like there's some amazing moments within that I was like, maybe I should have been a lot more nervous than I was. But losing Game 6 in Edmonton, having Eric Cole came back from a broken neck, that game we lost, and then like Rod Brindamore's speech after that game, just to kind of put everything in perspective for the whole group, going back home, it was something I'll never forget. And yeah, mayhem, man. And then it's just being able to experience that and share that with everybody who was there with you along the way. I think that's the coolest part about winning the Stanley Cup is like you get to share that moment with everybody else, because we all know we didn't get where we were by ourselves. Like it takes a team and a community to help people get where they do, and to be able to share with that at the end with them was the coolest part.
So when did Carolina come into the league? Do you
Huh.
remember what year? Or tied? I don't know. Like that had to have been the first taste of like previous to that where they playoff bound. Like did they have
So
actually
they
the year before? Didn't they lose?
so they went to the finals, and I think it was 03 or 02
Okay,
against the Red Wings. They lost in the
right.
finals to the Red Wings. Like the Red Wings were stacked, and so the market had a taste of obviously getting there, and so it was an interesting market because it was like obviously huge college basketball, college football,
Mhm.
and then when those two, like when college basketball finished, like it was like hurricanes,
Yeah,
and they've done such a good job. Obviously they've been good for a long amount of time there, and they've built from youth hockey all the way up. They have a great following now, so it
yeah,
was yeah, it was a fun place to play. But I still remember like walking after winning the cup, like they have their main street in Carolina there with all the restaurants, and I took it from a place called Sullivan's, and I was walking it up to the cup, up the street to another bar, and like there was no one even. I was just like walking down the street with a cup, and I'm like, no one is even like losing their shit. Like I'm like, what's going? You know what I mean? Like it was so funny, just like weird moment for me, just being able to scroll down the street with a cup and
yeah.
to a different bar, much different than Chicago when we won in 2010.
Yeah, you're like yelling at people like, "Hey, this is the Stanley
Yeah,
Cup.
look at me, man. Just look at me.
Come check it out."
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
all right. Well, I'm gonna go to the second word you picked, roller coaster. I think roller coaster is a good word for a good topic for us to discuss. I mean, being like a podcast where we want to like humanize people, right? And kind of show that athletes aren't just robots. I kind of want to talk about maybe in one of those moments where you were kind of going through that roller coaster, like in a down period where you like really had to like step back and kind of acknowledge your emotional well-being, and maybe like a specific moment where you were like, okay, like I shouldn't just keep going, putting my head down and go, like maybe I have to like talk to somebody, or whether it's your wife or coach or whoever it may be. But like, was there any moment in your career where it really stuck out to you, like you're starting to sort of get into a bad place and you needed to figure it out?
Yeah. So for me, that came when I was in New York with the Islanders. I had, my whole experience there from a hockey perspective, like I didn't play as well as I wanted to. I didn't produce the way I wanted to. I had three young children. So when I signed there as a free agent, I had a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a newborn. And it was just like, it was tough right from the get go because you're trying to like embed yourself in a new team, and your family's trying to find a place and get settled, and your wife's at home with 3 kids, 3 and under. So like there was that stress that you take home, take to the rink, trying to navigate all that, and then fast forward to me having essentially when Lou took over as GM and Barry took over as coach. That year I had 2 knee surgeries. Basically, my right knee, major knee surgery, left. I came back, played 10 games, blew my left knee out. So and something that I've learned was like, it was great throughout my whole life of like internalizing, and then put my head down and work. Same thing over and over again. And that was my gift. Like, I'm not complaining about that. Like, that's what I was good at, but I didn't know any other way. So I was in that system repeatedly, and then all of a sudden you come back for camp after having 2 major knee surgeries, try to get in the lineup. I got sent down to the minors, and that was really like the first time I was like, oh, like there was such anxiety and like tension in me, like I don't know what to do, and I didn't know who to talk to, I didn't know how to deal with it, I didn't know a way forward. I was just like, I'm sure from the outside people were like, oh, this guy's just grumpy and quiet. And my wife was actually the first person that was like, hey, like you need to talk to someone. You don't talk to me, you need to talk to someone, because you're not yourself. Like when you come home, you're not yourself. It doesn't even feel like you're here. And I wasn't. I was just in my own head, like going through every possible scenario of like, how do I get out of this? Like, and then there's shame. There's like, my identity as a hockey player. So if I'm not playing NHL, like what does that say about me? And then you start to doubt yourself from that standpoint. So all those different things are come into play. And like I said, most people from the outside would have just been like, oh, he's just a quiet guy that, might be a little grumpy today. So luckily at that moment, I was, Thomas Hickey and I were both traveling from Long Island to Bridgeport pretty much daily. Like we would drive back and forth. It was like a 2-hour drive, hour and a half, 2 hours for practice. So we drive back and forth, and he was working with, Dan Leffler, you guys, I think you guys have had on your podcast to work with you, Riles.
Mm-hmm.
So he was working with Dan. He was like, hey, like, I think I asked him, like, hey, do you work with anybody? And he's like, yeah, actually, I work with a guy. Do you want to talk to him? And that was the best thing that I've ever done. It was super impactful. It has been one of the biggest impacts of my life going forward, and what has happened since that moment. And it was just like a flood of relief having that conversation with them. And it was like, oh, like I have someone who can show me a way forward, show me a different way, show me how to be like kind to myself in moments and not just beat the shit out of myself repeatedly trying to get more results or more results. And that was really my first realization that, hey, like there are different ways to approach the situation. Yeah, there's things that I'm good at, my ability to be resilient, but there's different ways that can look for everybody. And there's different ways that I can really problem solve how to move forward in the best possible way, not only for me, but everyone around me. How do I want to impact not only myself, but like the people that I'm seeing on a daily basis, and my family at home and the people that I care about. All that stuff is so interconnected. And I look back at my career now, and there's so many times where I was just like one track mind. How can I be the best constantly? And there was a cost to that, and that was just me not paying attention to to those signs, and part of it was just like me not obviously not having a way, uh, understanding a way forward as well.
I definitely want to like come back to that conversation with your wife and like the perspective shift that took place like in that very moment. But I also want to touch on like I've never really asked, like we've been able to have quite a few guys on that have, you know, played a long time in the league, never won a cup or anything. But for you, like I mean, it was World Juniors, like that was peak, and then it was Carolina, and then that was like the peak, and then like, you know, like captain in Winnipeg, and like and then obviously towards the latter half of your career, you know, things definitely started to, you know, take place where you needed to shift your perspective a little bit. Like looking back now, would you have your career any other way, especially like looking back at the lessons you were able to learn and like the peaks and valleys that took place like from the start to the end? Like I know that's kind of a, you know, probably an odd question, but I'm just genuinely curious, like would you have what you had any other way?
No, because I think it shaped who I am today. And I mean, I think as you get older, you understand. And it's funny because we're trying to teach kids this. And
Mm-hmm.
part of our program is teaching kids this is like those moments are there in your life to teach you. And I had some blind spots that I was unaware of and needed those moments and that struggle to figure out a different way and figure out the way that I wanted to move forward. So I think that's obviously easier to say after the fact, but like I wouldn't change any of that because that shaped who I am today. That shaped how I am as a father, how I am as a husband, how am as a son, and a friend. And to me, you know, that's just part of life. Part of life is like figuring that shit out. And you need the idea that no one has those moments is just not true. Like everybody has those moments, and I think part of, you know, normalizing the conversation is just that. Like, hey, like we're human. We screw up. We make mistakes. That's great. You know what I mean? Like then we get to learn from those mistakes and decide who we want to be moving forward from that. You know, now if we're making the same mistakes over and over again and we're not interested in growing and learning, then that's a different story. But you know, the idea that you would change that just to not have to deal with pain doesn't resonate with me.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And yeah, no, I appreciate that. I'm just like, I don't know why that question came to mind. I'm just genuinely curious. And then also, like you mentioned the conversation that you had with your wife. And I mean, there's so many people in life that I think have that conversation that just like takes them right back and it just like rocks your world. And I had a similar one as well. But have you been able to like now track back and like now have a new conversation with your wife and understand where she was in that place? Because I think that's like a hard thing for us to realize is like how much pain we're actually causing our people and our loved ones because like how much we're bottling it up. And I'm just obviously I'd imagine that it strengthened your relationship a ton, but I'm just curious like looking back how she felt in that moment and how hard it must have been for her to actually say that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think there's probably a few things there. One was like I think she was worried about me, so there's a lot of empathy in her. And the other part is I like it is like what is actual like love and when someone cares about you, and you know, for especially for guys in general, like this is a great topic because it's like what does that look like? It doesn't mean to keep going along with your bullshit and you know, be a part of the game that you're playing. It's like, hey, how do I, her showing up for me and caring about me and loving me was like disrupting me in that moment and being like, hey, like I love you, you're not yourself, get your shit together. And that was powerful for me coming from her because like I know where that was coming from. That was coming from a place of love and a place of like, you know, like I care about you and I want you around and I want you to, I know who you can be and I want you to be that person. So having her show up for me that way definitely strengthened our relationship. And then obviously it was just like me starting to be aware of the impact that I was having. And I think I did actually. Like that was a weird thing is like I knew I wasn't, I didn't want to be the way I was, and I didn't want to be edgy, and I didn't want to be come home and like not pay attention to my kids the way I wanted to. So like I knew what I had the vision in my head of like what I wanted to be. I just didn't know how to get there. And she was kind of the ignition, um, to for you know, pushing me towards like, hey, start somewhere. You know what I mean? Like you got to start somewhere. You're not going to figure out where if it's a good decision or you know a good way forward unless you start trying. So you got to pick a path. hey, that's not working. Okay, let's try something different. And that was a realization for me in that moment. Was like, doing nothing is the worst thing you can do.
Yeah, it's so true. Like it, like, and it's hard to map out like your journey, like you said, like to start somewhere. It is hard. Like, and I hope, and even just us having this conversation, like I think it can help people just get that ball rolling, because it is like, I think a lot of people, like, they want to make good choices, and they want to be like a healthy partner, and they want to be a valued member of a team, and but it is hard to like to change your habits and things like that. And I mean, I think that aligns a lot with what you're doing, right? With the 1616 Foundation is like, I mean, just like a low level explanation, but just kind of instilling that in kids at a young age would be so valuable. So maybe you can, it's a good segue into 1616. You can kind of just give us a little bit of a breakdown on kind of what it is and how it sparked, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, and through my experience, there was a realization that there was a lot of skills that I didn't have, and with that, and it was kind of a weird moment in time because I that year I was playing with the New York Islanders. They didn't want me in the NHL club. It was the COVID year, so they had taxi squads, and then they had guys in the minors. So they didn't want me in the minors because they wanted their kids to play. I couldn't be on the taxi squad because of how much money I was making. They couldn't emergency recall me, and then they didn't want me in the NHL. So I skated by myself for a year. Literally, I would text Lou, 10 o'clock at night, be like, "Hey, Lou, what time can I skate tomorrow?" He say, "You can come in at 2." All right, cool. So I get there, like no one would be there. I think Dennis Seidenberg would come skate with me every once in a while when he was available. And through that, I was talking to Dan, my mental skills coach, and he was like, "All right, man. Like at the end of this year, like, what do you want? Do you want to look back and be proud of what you did this whole year, or do you want to just be like, no, I like went through the motions and stayed in shape like throughout the year, and that was it?" And the answer was clear to me. It was like, yeah, like no, like I want to do something impactful. Like how can we turn this into a really positive thing for me and for other people? And my wife and I had long been supporting mental health in different ways, and Canadian mental health, different programs like that. And a lot of it was very reactive. And we'd always had the thought of like, hey, like this is all great stuff. You need that, but like, how can we get ahead of this issue? Like, how can we have a proactive approach to mental health? And after going through what I went through, it was clear to me like, no, like we need to get these skills that I learned at 35 when I hit a wall to kids at a young enough age where they, at least when that adversity happens or those different things happen in their life, they have a toolkit. They understand what's going on. They have an understanding of like the feelings that they're having and the emotions, and that those aren't necessarily bad things. Like, so can we create a program that essentially does that for, my idea is definitely sports in general, but like I know hockey, my connections are in hockey, so that's where we're going to start. So it's a proactive approach to mental health for 10 to 12-year-old hockey players. And we're using, lived experiences from, NHL players, Olympic women's athletes, people that have had a major impact on our game that we all know have a story. I don't know, it's like there's some humbleness in our sport where people don't like to brag about themselves, don't like to feel like they overcome, you know, tough things. Like we like to put that off and be like, no, it wasn't a thing. Like, no, it's, yeah, like what you did was incredible. And how can we use those moments to teach kids that you went through some of the same self doubt, that you went through, feeling alone, that you went through a lot of these mental struggles that I think everybody, as you get older, you start to understand that everybody goes through the same thing. But kids don't realize that as professional athletes, we go through the same stuff. So can we teach kids that, hey, like that's normal, and then give them skills to navigate those things? And that's essentially what 1616 is all about.
Wow. Yeah, no, yeah, that's incredible. And I think that's that moment, especially in that year where you're just by yourself on the ice and you're wanting to bring something out of this. I think that's like that is exactly what the foundation is. And I've been fortunate to coach 11 and 12-year-olds these past couple of years, and I think I mean you will be able to relate to that. But I mean, it's tough because like it's a lot about confidence and self-esteem and reassurance and that validation. And I think like I'm curious because I found with our coaching staff, like when we're creating a culture and we're creating like a community where these kids can just come and you know we can just shoot the shit with these kids and treat them as you know as hockey players, but also just like young people. And I think that's what created that where these kids were like, all right, what I'm going through, I'm allowed to go through. And I'm curious as to if you've kind of experienced and understood the same way about how kids operate nowadays and how much that those little bits of reassurance and those little, you know, like my favorite part was asking kids like, what'd you have for dinner? Or like, you know, what's up? Like, what's new? Like, you know, like I think those little questions and those little conversation starters are helping build that foundation and that foundation of culture, which I think, I mean, you've been able to be a part of so many incredible cultures and about around so many incredible characters. So I guess my question is, are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, and I think I don't think adults are any different. Like
No.
that never changes, right?
Yeah.
We're just dumbing it down to a level that 10, 12-year-olds understand. And it's super simple at that age, right? Like our program focuses on like what we call the 4 C's. And it's like the competence of playing hockey, which we know everyone's getting already. They're getting overloaded with that, so they don't need more of that. But there's a part of our program that handles that. And then it's connection. So like what does it mean to be a part of a team, feel like you know feel like you're supported by coaches, parents, and teammates? What does that look like? What are the struggles in that? Like, you know what I mean? Like helping kids understand that they're a part of something special. And I think that's, at a young age, you just want to feel like you're a part of something, and that's a special part of sports, right? You don't want to be the 10 year like at 10 years old, you don't want to feel like you're an outcast with your group, and kids need to understand that they're all part of that. So something as simple as like, hey, go sit beside someone that you don't normally sit beside. Ask them what they do away from the rink. Can have such a massive impact on creating connections within your group. And it's interesting because it's a lot of stuff like once you like sit back and they're super simple topics and they make sense. You're like, yeah, okay, like they make a lot of sense. We lose track of bringing those things up when we get into like the routine of like go 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 as parents, as coaches, and we forget about the kids. Like, hey, like live in that moment. And like, are you thinking about like, do all the kids feel like they're a part of this? Because as you guys know, like that plays a big factor between your ears. So connection was the first C. Confidence is the next one, right? Everybody can relate to like, hey, when you're confident, you're feeling good, you're playing better, all that stuff, you feel pretty good about yourself. So dumbing it down to like, what is that for kids, right? And then, like I would say most adults have a tough time understanding how to create confidence, right? Most don't. You're like, oh, like just tell yourself to be confident, and it's like you're gonna go do it. It's like no, like there's like let's be a little more intentional with that, and talk to kids like, hey, like to me, confidence is like having courage to take risk and try new things and fail like that, because even if you fail a couple times, you keep trying. Like that moment of like success that you have as a person, just a human being, not even a child, like that's where confidence grows. So how do we recreate those experiences and be intentional with that with kids as coaches and parents? And then character, right? I talked about that World Junior team. Like every one of those guys had a shit ton of skill, and they all had character. I speak about their character because of the people they are, and that character is tied to performance. Tied to performance and tied to how you feel about yourself day in, day out. And what is that like? What does integrity look like? What does it look like to be resilient? All those different things that, the best part about sports is there's so many different moments within games, within practices, within your yearly routine with your group that you get to practice those things. And for the coaches and parents to have the ability to like call those things out, for good, or whether the kids are doing good, and help kids understand why those things are important. And that's, essentially what we're trying to be as a resource with 1616 is like a resource for parents and coaches to help bring that to the surface for the kids and help them understand the importance of that and really understand what that's all about.
So what's like the format, kind of the structure of 1616? And like you said, like you kind of touched on being a resource for parents and coaches too. Like how does that work? Like how does that back and forth work between them, and then differentiate between like your relationship with the kids?
Yeah, so we were essentially trying to make 1616 like it's completely digital, and consider it like a little bit of a drip. So like little pieces of info throughout the course of the season, and we're shifting things around a little bit in terms of length of program. But next year will be like 10 weeks. So like little drips over 10 weeks to reinforce a lot of these concepts. So for the kids, they get a video on a Sunday. It's like a 5-6 minute video of an athlete teaching them a concept. So they get to watch like a cool up tempo YouTube style video where they get to be engaged in a cool story. And at the end of that video, we get them to reflect on if they understood the story and if how it relates to them in their life, like how that concept relates to them in their life. And then we have a iPhone style video come out midweek that challenges them to try what we call our live it out. So challenges them to try something new in their life that relates to that concept. So we'll have, Jordan Eberle can go like pops up on the phone, says, "Hey, this is what I do in my life. I'm gonna, I want you guys to try this out in your life." So we're actually getting them to tangibly try to take that into action into their life. And then the parents, parents and coaches get the same video. And then for the parents, it's like, "Hey, here's why this is important, and here's different ways to support and what we're teaching your kid." So they have an understanding of why we're doing what we're doing. And then we have things like, car ride home tip, which we
That's
all know
awesome.
is, yeah, can be used for good and for evil. So conversation starters. So, one of the cool things that we've seen in the program is just like we're creating conversations that people and families aren't just having because they don't come naturally, right? So the program kind of brings that stuff to the circle, and people are having some great conversations with their kids, and then catch your kids. So we want you to like catch them doing the behavior that we're trying to promote this week in that concept. So that's the parent piece. And then the coach gets the video, and then same thing, like it's the why this is important for your athletes. And midweek there's a reflection. So are you thinking about this with your kids? So specific example would be like, hey, like, are you thinking about the kids that are struggling? It's easy to coach the really skilled kids. Are you thinking about the kid that maybe is struggling to keep up, and maybe spend a little extra time with him to help him bring him up to the other level? So different things like that, again, all related to connection, confidence, and character. And then we also we did work with Adam Oates worked with me to do a bunch of different skill videos that we've made available to all the coaches, so they can start to implement some of the things that he does really well in teaching some of the best players in the world into youth hockey, just to have them think about those different concepts.
Damn.
So a
That's
lot going on, man.
Yeah.
Oh, preach,
I
ladder.
feel like
That
I feel
is
like I'm just like verbal diarrheaing on you guys. So
no, man. I am fully on board. Like I don't. Yeah, I'm fully on board. Like this is. I couldn't agree more. Especially with like even that last point you hit on with like coaching, and like it's so easy to focus on like your stars or your kids that are can make or break a game, but like take some time and be intentional with the kids that maybe aren't scoring the goals and maybe aren't getting all the attention. And I think that's so important. So yeah, kudos to you for being able to recognize those little things. And I think that is so important, especially like my next question is related to what's next. But I want to. I definitely think 11 and 12-year-olds is like I mean, you have it down to a science, but I think it's like the perfect age group. But I'm definitely curious as to like what are you're continuing to expand, and you got OT coming in now. Like, what else are you hoping to get out of it? And I know how rewarding this must be for you, but like, what else are you kind of like continuing to hope for?
yeah, I mean, for us, it's capacity, right? So we had 88 teams. Last year was our first, what we would call our beta season. So we had 88 teams across North America, from Raleigh, North Carolina to San Diego, from the East Coast of Canada to Vancouver. I think we had a team in New Brunswick, maybe, all the way through to Vancouver. So for us now, we're going to be very intentional with the communities that want this. We're going to go where people that want this, and we can engage and build communities within, kind of build hubs, 16 hubs, and start to really build a community around that. Our focus is going to be 10 to 12 and perfecting that. Like, we want to crush the 10 to 12-year-old market and do it really well, create a great experience for everyone involved. We have a vigorous monitoring and evaluation process where we've already taken feedback, and we're going to implement that and we want this to be something that's engaging for people, not homework. That's been my goal the whole time. Like, we, as parents, as coaches, we have enough on our plate. Like, I get it, I have 3 kids. So how do we make this like a resource that helps coaches and parents, not something extra that they have to do? And part of that is making it engaging and fun for the kids. And we're going to try to find different ways. Like, we're now that we have, our impact reports coming out next week, and it's all great stuff that said, hey, like, this does what we said it was going to do, and it's been great, and there's nothing else like it. So it'll be like, okay, who can we partner with on a corporate standpoint? We're talking to a bunch of NHL teams that are excited about what we're doing. We already have, we've got some funding from different clubs like, the Calgary Flames and the Winnipeg Jets and Washington Capitals. So starting to go where those teams have expressed interest as well, and start to build communities in Manitoba and Alberta and Washington. So all fun stuff. It's like we got to start up. So I'm learning as we go, and we got a great team of between our executive director and my wife, and we got a bunch of researchers, we got mental health specialists, we got our creative team in Chicago. So we got people everywhere that are super pumped with just having a profound impact on kids, and it's been a lot of fun for me.
That's amazing. That's like, it's unbelievable. And I think about growing up. I mean, I had a great upbringing playing hockey, but just to be able to have these tools in your back pocket can change so many, and change relationships between parents and their kid, and coaches and their kid. And sometimes parents and coaches, I feel like it's all they know is to be a certain way, and they think they're doing the right things, but it might not help every kid on their team. So I think that's it's so cool. Do you have one moment or story that's kind of goes off in your head about being extra rewarding?
Yeah, there's been a few. I think there was, a kid, Connor Carrick has an episode in our program that he goes through actually some breathing stuff. So maybe I'll send it to you, Ty, after this. But
much needed.
But yeah, so I had a dad in Arizona. His kids were in the program, and he said, "Hey, like my I just wanted to let you know, like my kids hasn't been able to sleep." He said night terrors for the longest time. And that episode with Connor has been so helpful. Like, he's following along with the breathing stuff. He is connected with Connor's story, and now he's like sleeping through. His sleep is so much better. And so hearing a story like that, we did a bunch of our monitoring and evaluation team did some small group stuff with parents, and they had parents in tears as they're going through the interview process because of the impact it's had on their kids. So I think those are the moments that you're like, okay, I mean, it's been a long journey. It's just taken us 3 years almost to get to this point. And there's times along the way where we're like, holy shit, are we doing the right thing here? Is this the right thing? And it's moments like those that you're like, yeah, this is where we're supposed to be. And this is having that type of impact on people's lives is why we're doing what we're doing. So yeah, those are awesome. The stand out.
Oh, that's literally, I mean, there's arguably not a better feeling in the world. Like, knowing that, especially with that kid and sleeping, just hearing that gives you so much validation that, okay, we are doing something good and there is an impact being made. And I think that is hearing that and knowing that I know exactly how that feels, and it's the best. So I'm glad that you're getting that feedback and you're getting those tangibles, and you're I mean, you deserve it. You've created something that is very unique, and you said it perfectly when you said we're not trying to create homework, because we want it to be engaging, we want it to be fun, inviting. So I mean, I don't know if you have anything else left, Riles, but I'm all set, because that was like I said, I'm on the 16-16 train right now.
No, that was it was unreal hearing more. And I actually got a message from I don't even know if I've told you this, but I got a message from a dad that does the 1616, like he's part of it, and his
Yep.
daughter does it, and he sent me a video of you and the daughter, and she, like her, something that stuck out to her about the program was the cookies and cream thing, that like the video that I had sent to you. And
Yeah.
cookies and cream was the analogy that I learned from Dan, where you wipe off the cookies and cream from your face when you're kind of taking in bad brain food, I guess you could call it, and trying to move on and seeing the positive out of your situation. So he sent me that and just said like thank you for that, and it's helped my daughter a lot. And I mean, I just responded saying, well, it takes like a special parent to engage in this too, like to really like have their child try to learn these topics that are so helpful to them. And we just kind of had a short little conversation, and it was awesome, and it made me feel good. And so I mean, you're doing an unbelievable thing, and we appreciate you coming on, speak your mind.
Yeah. Thanks, man, and thank you for the help with 1616 too. And I should mention, like, one of the coolest parts about this whole process has been the engagement from guys and girls within the hockey community. Like, everyone has been super helpful with their own stories. It's funny, like, you tell them like, hey, this is for 10 to 12-year-old kids, and they're like, yeah, like, what can I do? So there's been a lot of time and effort on a bunch of different athletes that have supported what we're up to, and it's a pretty cool community that we have, and I'm looking forward to maximizing that to help kids. So thanks for having me on, guys. It's been a pleasure. I've listened to a bunch of your stuff, and you guys are doing some great work, and just happy to be able to jump on here finally with you guys.
We will see you at Predator Ridge. Thank you very much, Ladder. And
Yeah,
yeah, no, honestly, thank you again.
yeah, no, my pleasure, man. And don't forget my invite when you go there.